What's going on, guys? This is Gainz Gaming. Today we are going to be going over the new update that just landed in our inbox today about 8 hours ago. This is going to be a game-changing update, and I really hate using that word, but it truly is. I think this is an update that they really needed to do just to kind of bring life back into the game, especially for late game players that are in between KVKs and Season of Conquest. Because, I mean, truthfully, it does get kind of boring, the day-to-day, just doing your daily tasks, getting all that stuff done, doing the same events. But now we are finally getting some new events coming into the game, so we are going to dive right into the update that landed, the Museum of Wonders. So this will be landing in about 2 weeks on the 16th of May. And so I'm going to read through this here and just give you guys my thoughts on what the update will entail, kind of walk you guys through why I think it is going to be a game-changing update and why I think it is going to be huge for especially late game players in terms of just having more fun with the game. So we'll get started with the Museum Day event series. So I'm pretty sure we saw this last year. It's going to be that typical 7-day event where you're doing those quests like the Barbarians, the Barb Forts, collecting resources, all that kind of stuff, doing those 7-day tasks to earn rewards in a linear way. So the more you do, the more rewards you're going to get, but it doesn't scale upwards. They're all the same reward. Pretty sure it's like a 5-minute speed up and then some resources. And so you are also going to be doing the Precious Pottery event, which is going to be with your Alliance members. Pretty sure we saw this last year as well, where you are collecting pottery and putting them into that big pot, and the higher your Alliance gets, the more rewards you're going to get. That is going to line up with the Masters of Craft, which is where you collect the clay and exchange it for the rewards. And then also, if you are the #1 collector, and in the, I'm assuming the top 10 or top 20, you are going to receive an Epic City Theme Choice chest, which is great, especially if you don't have any of the Epic Health City themes, because those are really great for low spend, free-to-play players, and even whales who just don't have like the Zenith skins. Those are great skins to have that will kind of just boost your overall stats. We're also going to be having the Treasure Hunt event, which is where you send your scouts out and search for those hidden treasures. I'm pretty sure you do like 3 of them a day, and it's kind of a pain, but it's pretty easy to find on the map. We're also going to have a race against time. We see that periodically where you eliminate barbarians in a short period of time. It's best to do this in groups, otherwise you're not going to get in the top 10, and that's typically where you get some gold heads or potentially some choice chests for legendary materials. And so I would encourage you guys to find a group of people, maybe get in Discord voice and do that event together. You're all going to be up in the top 10 as long as you guys are the best performing group, because obviously other groups are going to be doing that as well. So find a group to do that with and spread out on the map to get the best score. So the events will come out within 2 weeks after the update. Obviously we'll see those on the calendar. So this is the game-changing event that I was talking about earlier, the all-new War of the Runes event. And this, if you guys are familiar with Call of Duty, this is a battle royale within Rise of Kingdoms. So this is going to be with 8 governors. And this is going to be something that you most likely will not be able to do with your alliance members, because otherwise it's not going to be 1v1, v1, v1, etc. Otherwise, you're going to be allying up with your alliance member, obviously, and so they are trying to avoid that, like when Champions of Olympia, where you have teams of 5. This is going to be teams of 1v1, v1. And so you're all on your own. You are fighting 7 opponents, but then throughout the War of the Runes battlefield, there are mercenaries. And so I'm pretty sure these are going to be CPUs, where you are able to capture them and recruit them onto your troops. And so you are only able to do 1 troop at a time. So I'm assuming most people are going to be doing like Guan CPO, Nevsky, XY, all the really great commanders that we have right now. But I think that the mercenaries could mean 2 different things, where you can either capture a separate march, where like say you have a Guan CPO and there's a XY Nevsky on the field, and you can capture them, and now you have those 2 troops that you can command. Or what I think is most probable is where there's a set number of troops on the map that you can capture, and then say you have 200,000 troops in your Guan CPO, you capture those 100,000 troops, now you have 300,000 troops in your Guan CPO. And so that is what I think is more likely to happen, where you're just going to have a bigger army, and that you're going to try to go kill the other governors that you're fighting against, the other 7 people that you're fighting against. And then if you are defeating other governors' troops, it will also allow you to recruit their soldiers into your troops. So I'm not sure if that's going to be like if you are an infantry march and you capture cavalry, if you get cavalry in your march, or if you get their march to go with you. I think that's something that we'll just have to see what happens when the event comes out, but I think either way is going to be very viable for the event, and so I think it'll be interesting to see how Lilith decides to go about this. But in my opinion, I feel like since it says recruit them and gain more units, then I'm assuming it will be like a set march, somewhat similar to the Golden Kingdom, where you're able to recruit a further march. Then you are going to be you're able to use those to march with your troops. And if you have two troops, even if you're fighting like a whale, you are probably going to be able to beat them with 2-on-1 unless they have freakish gear, which obviously is also very probable. But the other thing that will also be happening that will help free-to-play and low-spend players beat those whales is that troops on the battlefield will periodically be granted a random skill. So we're not sure what the skills are going to be. Like, it could be very minimal, it could be game-changing. I'm not sure what the skills will be because they don't really talk about what they will be here, but I think this could be very, very monumental for low-spend free-to-play players to actually be able to beat the high-spend players in this event, where if it is a 1v1 or a 2v2 in terms of how many troops you have left, and you get that random skill to fire off, then I think that could really help the low-spend free-to-play players beat those whales in this event. The battlefield will also be minimizing in the size as the event goes on, and so it says the fires of war will approach the center of the map. So similar to Call of Duty Warzone, if you're familiar with that game, like I said, in the Battle Royale, the map starts to minimize as the game goes on, and so by the time you're at the very end and there's like 3 people left, there's almost no map. Like, you can barely move around because they're trying to make you engage with one another. And so that way you can't just hide and avoid fighting. You have to be able to fight and beat your opponents in order to win the game. And so it says if you are in that fire, you are going to be being dealt continuous damage to your troops. And so I'm assuming similar to like in Soroli Crisis and stuff like that, where if you are in like the zones where those bosses are like putting damage out and you get stuck in there, you're going to be taking continuous damage. That is, I think, is going to be similar to here. Not sure how much damage it's going to be, because it could be either just very minimal, maybe like 1,000 every second, or it could be killing your troops almost immediately if you were stuck in the fire zone. And so it's really going to be trying to get you into that center zone in order to fight your opponents, in order to become the last one standing and be victorious. I'm curious to see what they do for rewards here too. I think this will be a much better indicator for skill level than, say, Champions of Olympia. I've been a huge advocate for how flawed I think Champions of Olympia is in the ranking system, because it doesn't really matter how well you do individually, it matters how your entire team does. And if you don't have a team set together of all 5 people, and you get stuck with random people that don't necessarily know how to play the game effectively, your rank is going to be diminished because of your team. Even if you get 20 kills, 0 deaths, and 10 assist kills, and you lose, you still lose ranking. And so I think that is a flaw in the game. You also don't get a lot of credits when you lose, and so I think a lot of the times for really good players that just don't have groups set together, they are the ones that are upset about the event, because they're good at the game, they know how to play it, but their teams don't, and so it takes them 5 times as much time in order to get their just activity rewards, to get the 2 universal heads that come with the event. And so that's one thing that I think is a flaw with Champions of Olympia, but I feel like this event, the War of the Ruins event, is going to be a much better indicator for skill level and allow those players that don't necessarily have a group for Champions of Olympia in order to showcase their skill and do well in this event 1v1v1 up to 8 people. There are also going to be some Lost Kingdom optimizations. In Season 1, there's going to be an update of Endless War, and so I think this is really interesting. The number of kingdoms in a season is changed from 8 to 4, so I think this will also help with matchmaking as well in those kingdoms, because right now in KVK1, if you have like a jumping group, you're going to have a kingdom that is just substantially more powerful than the other kingdoms, because they have people who are creating all new accounts that know how to play the game, and they are going to be powering up much faster than other kingdoms. And so I think this is going to be a way to group those kingdoms together in a more effective way, where they're going to be a little more even, whereas if you have 8 kingdoms, it's going to be pretty uneven with like 2 or 3 power kingdoms, and then the rest are all new players. And so I think this will be really helpful for new players coming into the game. There will also be a new map, assuming it's going to be little bit smaller, similar to Heroic Anthem versus Strife of the 8 maps in terms of how many camps there are in the KVK. And so I think that'll be really helpful for new players coming into the game and just give a better experience for those new players, which is definitely needed in order to help the longevity of the game. There will also be new kingdom technologies that will grant powerful buffs to kingdoms in development and battle. I'm not sure if this is going to be in the Alliance technology, which I think would be interesting because most kingdoms after KVK2 or KVK3 have all their technology maxed out. And so the only things that you can really donate to if you come here into Alliance technology is the Alliance skills. And so I'm not sure if they're going to add more Alliance skills in here on top of all these ones. But all of these, like the war, territory, and development, all these are maxed out in basically every developed kingdom. Usually after KVK3, they're all maxed out. And so I think that'll be really interesting what they choose to add there, and if it's going to be just a skill or if it's going to be the other technologies that you're going to add onto. And then in Season of Conquest, this will be a little more relevant for most players because most players are past KVK1. This is going to be the Power Up Pioneer event. And so this looks really interesting. So governors taking part in this Pioneer event will gain Pioneer rewards and participation rewards on top of the standard rewards. So that's always great, getting more rewards. But this is also crazy. All new ranged combat. Story exclusive commanders can command siege units to build Aero towers, allowing you to attack enemy troops from long distances. I think this is going to be very similar with the naval battles when you are able to control the archer towers and have them shoot from a long distance. I think this is going to be exactly what the new Season of Conquest Pioneer event is going to look like, where you are able to shoot towers, have Aero towers shooting your enemies from a long distance in order to get them away from your flags. It'll make it a lot more interesting to see how that's going to affect the game in terms of what kind of troops you're using, because I think that will make cavalry much more viable in Season of Conquest. Being able to get out of the AoE of the Aero towers is going to be very, very important for cavs, whereas infantry commanders aren't going to have as much march speed to get away, and so I think cavs are going to be a little bit more viable. And this is also going to be huge for siege. I think this is going to build a siege meta in Rise of Kingdoms. You are going to be able to fill these ranged towers with siege and start killing everything. And so I think this is going to open up Rise of Kingdoms, actually be able to use your siege units. And so maybe even having T5 siege units like these ones I made on accident are actually going to be useful in Rise of Kingdoms, having siege units, because you're going to be able to fill these towers with your siege and just kill all the enemy units. And so you're actually going to have story exclusive commanders as well that are only going to be used in this story and will be removed after the story ends. So I feel like these are going to be gathering specific commanders, I feel like, that are more powerful with siege. And so I think this is really going to open up the siege meta that we have really never seen besides filling flags with siege and just letting them die. But I think this is going to be huge for the game, especially for people who have more siege than they know what to do with and typically just delete them. I think this is going to be great for actually putting your siege for use and using siege for something that they were actually used for in actual medieval times, because siege were used to be used for burning cities and attacking people, because they just launch all these giant balls of fire and just destroy everything. And Rise of Kingdoms are basically useless. They're just there to die and gather. And so I feel like this is actually using siege for something they were meant for, and I think is going to be much more historic in terms of like what's realistic with using siege. So I think that's going to be huge for Rise of Kingdoms. There is also going to be a new troop blockade feature. This is also really interesting. While marching, friendly troops can pass freely, but non-friendly troops will not be able to pass when blockaded. I'm not sure how this is really going to work, if they are going to be able to attack your blockade, or if they cannot even get through it, attack it, whatever. I feel like they're going to be able to attack it, but I think this will be really good for infantry, being able to prevent enemy troops from getting through to your flag. And so, like, if there's, I wanted to show you guys, if there's like a river or something like that, I'll find a river right here. So you can see, like, you can't really get through this river, but there's typically like little streams that you can cross through. And so I'll try to find one, like a little bridge right here. So say you had infantry marches, or if you had a flag right here, you had infantry marches, make a wall right here. The enemy is not able to rally that flag because they can't get through this wall of infantry. And so I think that's going to align with what typical war strategy was like back when there was like infantry, cavs, archers fighting each other in the field, because infantry, they weren't really the ones pushing, those were like the cavs. And then so you're going to have like the infantry line here blocking the enemies from getting through. You're going to have the cavs marching through the infantry to attack. You're going to have the archers in the back row shooting arrows across to hit your enemies. And so I think that's going to be a very, very interesting tactic where the strategy of how you're going to fight is drastically going to change. And so I think that's going to be very interesting on how that's going to affect how your R4s and your leaders are going to be developing your war strategy in terms of how you're going to be pushing through, how you're going to prevent your enemy from getting through, setting up those blockades in the archer towers in order to shoot your enemies. On top of these siege units being able to shoot arrows, you're also going to be able to build arrow towers. So Crusader flags are now going to be able to turn into Alliance arrow towers, which will automatically attack nearby non-friendly cities, which is going to be very interesting for if that's going to take dead troops or if it's going to just fill up the hospital super quick, or exactly how much damage is it going to be doing. But that's going to make it so that you can't really teleport right next to an enemy flag because they're going to be shooting your city the entire time. And so that's going to make it hard for whales that want to be as close to the battle as possible but don't want to be taking that many sev wounds and fill up their hospital that quickly, because they're going to take a lot more dead troops if that's the case. And then there are going to be some improvements to the Season of Conquest story Desert Conquest, which they definitely need to improve. This is going to be adding a new fortress management screen, which is going to allow you to manage your fortress quickly. So that's always great, being able to have a new dispatch recall feature, returning dispatch troops, and then just some new improved user experience for the fortress. So hopefully this will kind of help fix up that Desert Conquest KVK, because from what I've heard, it hasn't been the greatest experience for players, and so hopefully they're able to fix that up, because the concept of being able to send your troops and have someone else control them is great for people who can't always play the game. And so I know that a lot of people were excited about that KVK, but it was a little disappointing. And so hopefully these improvements will help that experience a little bit. Some other improvements: when a city's location becomes part of enemy territory during the Lost Kingdom, it'll be automatically teleported back to its starting province. So this is really big for being zeroed, because it will basically make it impossible for kingdoms to be able to build alliance flags on your city and then make it so that you're taking more damage because you're on their territory. And so now they're going to have to attack you off territory, which is going to make it harder for them to zero you and make you kill a lot more troops. And so that's a benefit for being off territory, but at the same time, if they're able to build a flag on top of you and send you back, then you just wasted a teleport, having to teleport all the way back onto your alliance territory. And so I think that's a pretty interesting update that they added. I don't know if it was necessarily needed. And then alliance fortresses cannot be built in Kingsland during Lost Kingdom. I thought this was pretty standard. I feel like that's definitely a good optimization, because otherwise you're just going to be able to build your forts on the Kingsland and just never be taken out of it. On top of that, new coalition marker feature. I think this is amazing. The main alliance members and coalition leaders can now place markers visible to other coalition members on the map. This is huge because it was always so hard to communicate with your coalition with like what you wanted to do, and especially with their members. And so being able to have a coalition marker is going to be huge for field fighting and for just controlling marches on the field. And then some new optimizations. New commander filtering system, allowing you to filter commanders according to their unit type or specialty. This is great, putting all your infantry at the top, cav at the top, whatever. You're also going to be able to just select your troops a little bit easier, so I think that's great. They're changing the conditions for obtaining or scrapping beginners immigration items. I think this is good for protecting new kingdoms. It does make it a lot harder to do jumps though. And then finally, the Season of Conquest bundles Conqueror's Will, Mountain Warfare, and Battle of the Peaks will only be visible to governors whose city hall has reached level 25. I feel like this is also pretty standard, because you can't even enter Season of Conquest KVK until you're a city hall level 25, so I feel like that's just pretty standard. And then obviously just some improved graphics for the Kurak event that just landed in Season of Conquest. And then also, if you guys want to give feedback on the update, I think this is great. Just give the developers feedback on what you think of the update. This is really the best way that you can get in contact with them. Tell them what you think it went well, what you think needs more work, what you want to be done in future updates as well. So I think this is a great way to kind of just show the developers what your overall thoughts are. Plus, you get a little gift after 5 days following the update, so that's always great. So overall, I think that this update is going to be pretty substantial. I think that the museum day is not very huge. It's pretty standard for just a typical seasonal event. But I think the all new War of the Ruins event, the Battle Royale, is going to be super fun. I think this is going to be a lot more fun than Champions of Olympia. I'm really excited to see where they take this, and hopefully they take this into more naval battles as well, because I really enjoyed that when that was in the game. So hopefully they bring the naval battles back along with the new Ruins event. And then obviously the Lost Kingdom Season of Conquest updates with the ranged combat, troop blockades, coalition markers, and all that kind of stuff is going to be huge for Season of Conquest. I'm really excited to get into the Pioneer event as well, because we are now in Season of Conquest. So hopefully we are going to be able to do the Heroic Anthem Pioneer event when that comes into the game for us. We finally have our Season of Conquest commanders back, so I finally got my Guan Yu. Really excited for the CPO wheel. Unfortunately, we did get another Tamaris in the Mightiest Governor, so it is going to be another couple weeks until we get the CPO. And so hopefully that is sooner rather than later, because I really want to max spend CPO. I got tons of gems here. I got even more in my bag saved up to use for that wheel. And then obviously, I'm going to be using Nevsky as well when he comes onto the wheel. So I'm really excited for that. Stay tuned for those videos, because I will definitely be posting videos on those wheels. If you guys enjoyed the video today, please drop a like and subscribe. If you guys have any more Rise of Kingdoms content that you want me to cover, please drop that down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to make a video on it as soon as I can. Again, if you guys enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.